It's a big welcome to Talking Hawks. It's that time of year, fans. We are heading into the draft, and it's an exciting time. Daz is pumped, as I know you all will be as well. We're talking about the possibilities tonight. There's live trading. It can change things at the drop of a hat. But tonight we cover the six guys who could go at Hawthorn's pick six. So if you're joining us with Talking Hawks for the first time, we're all about connecting fans all around the world with passion, those that follow Hawthorn Football Club. So I'm here with Daz, I'm Matt, and Daz, I'm here to pick your brains tonight for and with the fans. So, mate, how's things before we just kick it all off?
Yeah, things are pretty good, mate. This is where the silly season begins, which is right up my alley. As you know, the draft and trade stuff went down pretty damn nicely with the Hawks fans last year. Looking forward to getting into this. And, we had our day picked out and we're sitting here now, and a Queensland club has come in and maybe has created a bit more drama.
The spanner in the works. So we are here 22nd of September. We're talking about what the possibilities are, but Gold Coast has thrown up that they are interested in Jack Baus being farmed out along with pick 7. And geez, to mine, pick 7 sounds pretty delicious, Daz. So I think we'd have a good look at Jack Baus, who was a midfielder before he was moved into the back line as a small defender. So he's probably had a lesser year in 2022 than years gone by, but I think he shows a lot of promise with it's 80 odd games, isn't it, that Baus has played.
Yeah, and that's with a couple of injuries as well. So when he's on the park, he's performed, which is fantastic. And he was essentially moved to the back line once Gold Coast knew they were getting Matt Rowell. And, that's just the way that it goes with Rowell's generational under-18s competition. It was probably a little bit unlucky, but make no mistake, this is a good old-fashioned salary dump from the Suns. So coming through with all this elite young talent, they're probably looking at their list going, in a couple of years, we'll need to pay Ben King probably top dollar. Rowell, Noah Anderson. We know Rankin's going, which for their salary cap is okay, but they've got plenty of guys coming through, including what looks like 4 academy kids next year. One of them is going to be a first-round pick. It looks like the natural progression. So they're going to need money off the books. It's Will Brodie 2.0, and I've seen a lot of social media, a lot of fans on social media going, we're going to have to get rid of a lot. Are we, though? I look at Will Brodie in the trade package when he's gone to Freo, which was exactly the same situation. It was a good old-fashioned salary dump, and Brodie did fantastically at Freo, finished second in their Brownlow medal count and should go top 3, top 5 in their best affairs with Brayshaw, Sarong, Darcy, these guys. But they sent Will Brodie, pick 19, which they ended up using on Matthew Johnson, 61 and 69. They sent all that to Fremantle and got a future second and a future fourth back, which they'll use in this draft and which they'll use to help their draft position. And they'll also kind of help Brisbane out in getting the points needed for Ashcroft and Jasper Fletcher, who will be top 25 picks for them. So they sent a lot to get rid of Brodie's salary and didn't receive a whole lot back. Now, considering pick 7 and 19 are going to be vastly, vastly different, the Hawks might have to give up, a future first. But, if you're telling me we could have pick 6, 7 and Jack Baus in the side now and not have a first-round pick next year, you'd probably take that, and the Hawks would probably be able to find a way to get into the first round next year, which is looking like a good draft for tall forwards.
Well, even with his contract being back-ended, Jack Baus, it's definitely of interest, and I'm sure the club will have a very hard look at that. So let's not really waste any time, Daz. You have scoured the draft talent all year round. That's what you do. Tonight, I'm here to pick your brains, and fans, you're in for a rundown with Talking Hawks, with Daz tonight. Here we go. So let's just crack right in. Who do you think will be first as we count down? Because there's going to be at pick 6, other clubs might throw up a few curly ones, and there might be a change. But who do you see is going at number 1? And let's just count down to number 6. So Daz, number 1.
So this is providing that clubs do what I believe every club should do, and that's take the best fit rather than the best talent. So my draft order might differ from a few people, but Will Ashcroft is going to go number 1 to Brisbane. North have done a lot a lot maybe questionable in their draft selections, but if they're not making Brisbane pay top dollar, I don't know what's going on. I think they take George Wardlaw, so he's not going to be one that we're going to talk about. And I think West Coast throw up a few daggers. We're going to talk about a couple of guys here just a little bit, but they're up in the air. I think GWS have to take Aaron Cadman. They need a tall forward that they still haven't really replaced since Jeremy Cameron left. So they need to do that. And then, of course, we look at Essendon and Adelaide. Adelaide are getting rid of pick 5, it looks like, to Gold Coast for Rankin, which is why Gold Coast are pretty happy to depart with pick 7 and Baus for that salary dump. They're probably going to look at paying that pick 5 good money down the line. What do they need? Well, that's a very good question, and we'll talk about all that in just a second. But let's talk about, first of all, the man that everyone is already telling me, why haven't you spoken about him yet? And that is Harry Sheezel from the Sandringham Dragons, who we will need to trade up for. Essendon, Adelaide, and North Melbourne all need this guy positionally in the way that he plays the game. So if we get any kind of inkling, I'll just finish this, Matty, and I'll get to you in just a second. If we get any kind of inkling that North are not going to take him, then we're going to West Coast, especially if we get Baus and pick 7, and we'll get rid of either pick 6 or pick 7. It'll probably be pick 6, if I'm being in all honesty, and something else, or maybe a couple of things, maybe a future second and something else in order to get that pick in. And then we would take the Sandringham Dragons star.
I've seen a lot of interest for Harry. So you talked about possibly trading up. How could Hawthorn possibly trade up? What is that? What's the most likely scenario? Is it even possible?
Yeah, well, it's definitely possible, and West Coast would be silly not to try it, especially if they're going to be as interested in Devon Robertson as I believe they are, and I believe they should be. So that kind of solves their midfielder problem, if you will. I'd rather have Devon Robertson than an 18-year-old kid. If it's those two choices, having both would be really nice if you're the Eagles. But they'll be looking at only sliding down the draft a few pegs, and they're probably going to need another first rounder and potentially a second rounder on top of that. I am not a fan of getting rid of both pick 6 and 7 if we do get Jack Baus. So I don't believe the Hawks are going to trade for pick 2 if we don't have 3 first-round picks in the next 2 years. If we don't get Jack Baus, I don't think we're going to trade up for him, because we would have to get rid of pick 7 and a player, it looks like, or pick 7, a future second and a player, whoever that player may be. I'm not going to speculate on the Hawks that might go out the door, but it looks like we're going to have to give up a massive bounty for it, and he may well be worth it, Harry Sheezel, and I'll talk about why in just a tick. But if we've only got 1 first-round pick this year and the 1 next year, we would have to either give up them both or 1, a future second, and a player. And that's a huge bounty for a kid that, whilst he looks so good on paper, we haven't seen play a senior game yet. So it's a wait and see. But if we get Jack Baus and we get pick 6 and 7, one of those will go, and a sweetener on top in future drafts, or a player will depart, and we'll end up with pick 2, which, if North Melbourne, of course, don't use on him, we absolutely do need to get him. It's as simple as that.
So you think West Coast will play hardball, and it will be a first round and a future second and a player? There's no chance of just a first round and a future second.
No, I don't think so. Not with Hawthorn anyway. So when North floated the possibility of trading pick 1, which they eventually used on Jason Horne-Francis, you got to remember that they turned down 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick from Adelaide. So, from Richmond. So, yes, Richmond's picks at the time, I think, was pick 9, which they used on Gibkiss. 1 in the first round they used on Tom Brown. And then a future first, so their first from this year, which would have only been, pick 10, which is a bit iffy. And then a second rounder, which would have been pick 28. So, it's still a huge bounty to give up for pick 1. And yes, I know the stigma between pick 1 and pick 2 is a little bit different, but it would be a massive haul to get pick 2. And it's just the way that it is, I suppose. So that's probably the package that we're looking at. A top 10 pick from this year, a future second, and probably a player, which would be, again, a huge bounty. And of course, we'd have to say goodbye to a Hawk.
Well, it's puts us into the window where we're probably likely to have a number of games into the recent youth that we have drafted to be able to be competing. So tough calls do get made at this time of year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But all right, so there's your first 2.
Yep. So who Harry is, so we'll go through. So the NAB League Grand Final, if you missed it, by the way, Sandringham Dragons getting the job done over the Stingrays. But this kid kicked 4 goals. And the harder the goal is, the easier he finds them. It was unbelievable what he was doing. He turned the first quarter on its head. He kicked a couple. He's built for the big moments. He's got ridiculous goal sense. And if you're out there and you're thinking, okay, so a bit like Blake Hardwick, both of them led the goal kicking for the entire NAB League. It was TAC Cup when Dimmer did it. Are we just getting a forward? Is a forward at pick 2 really what we're looking for? 36 goals in 14 games. Is that the ultimate return? Well, let me put those fears to ease. He can rotate through the midfield. He had 25 plus disposals in 3 different games. He's the first kid since 2014 to have 3 games of 200 plus Supercoach points or champion data ranking points. I know Supercoach isn't the be all and end all, so please, that's not what I'm going with this. But when you're the first time in 8 years to do something extraordinary, it deserves to be pointed out. And he's not just a downhill skier either. He had 22 touches, kicked 2-2 against the Oakleigh Chargers, and he got 181. So this kid's going big in big games. He had 6-2 and 28 disposals against Tasmania. He had 37 disposals in a midfield-centric game against the Northern Knights in round 9, and backed that up the next week in round 10 against the Western Jets, where he had 33 and kicked a lazy 3. This kid finds the footy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just a fortnight day out for Harry. So he looks so AFL ready, and the fact that the Hawks don't need to put him in at the centre bounce from day one and he can still have an impact, I think he's going to be an extraordinary thing. And the hype is real, is the point with Harry.
Yep. Love trying to cut through all of the hype. Absolutely. So amazing. Harry Sheezel will be great to watch regardless of where he drops. But all right, Daz, on to your third choice. Who do you think is going to be taken number 3 by GWS?
Yeah, well, GWS, I mean, they need to take Aaron Cadman. It's as simple as that. It's they need a tall forward. Jeremy Cameron left. It's Jesse Hogan, and that's it. They got Jacob Bauer in the mid-season draft, but Aaron Cadman needs to be the man that they go for. And Hawks, considering Cadman will be off the board, I think taking Matthew Jefferson at 6 is not going to be what the Hawks need at the moment. So we're probably going to ignore the tall forward.
Okay. All right. So where do we go from there? So it's Cadman's gone.
Great question.
Number 4. Who do you think's 4th cab off the rank?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So the 4th cab off the rank is someone that I hope slides to the Hawks. And that's Elijah Tsatas from the Oakleigh Chargers, who had a foot fracture in late May, and that could see him slide. We've seen guys with injuries. We look at Elijah Hollands, who everyone thought was going to North in the year that they took Will Phillips, and he had a knee injury. So Elijah could slide, and he is an outside mid who has speed. So if we don't get Jack Baus, he's the guy that would fit that mould quite beautifully. He averaged north of 30 disposals and over 7.5 inside 50s throughout the NAB League. So, yes, please, he's a forward centre kind of player. He drives the ball out of contest with his legs. So, Jai will love that as a player who also does it. And he's been described by a lot of different scouts as one of the best kicks inside 50 that they've seen. Loves to finish his work. He's 188 centimetres. And in his best game in the NAB League, he had a lazy 38 disposals and just the 13 inside 50s. Nothing special. This kid can play, and that foot fracture, he's completely over, and he looks like one of the most AFL ready-made players. So if he slips past 4 and 5, if Essendon and Adelaide go for either local talent or we don't end up with Sheezel and Tsatas is still on the board, we'll happily snatch him up. Thank you and goodbye.
All right, so that's who the Hawks should take if he's available.
Yep.
If
we keep pick 6, he's the number 1.
Is that? So between Essendon and Adelaide, is he a temptation? Is he a big temptation for them?
Yeah, he fits. Well, it kind of depends on what these clubs do in terms of the trade period. So if Essendon do go after these midfielders, they probably don't need a midfielder, so he could slide. But Adelaide's the threat for mine. Adelaide are a team that could go the local talent, and I'll talk about my man from South Australia in a bit later, a bit soon, I should say. So what Adelaide do is really going to affect what we do. So last year, we kind of knew that Josh Ward was going to be at the Hawks, and we kind of knew that from July, in all honesty, whereas it's really difficult to see what Adelaide are going to do. Are they going to go Elijah Tsatas if he goes. Does George Wardlaw slip? In my mind, he shouldn't, but he definitely might. And they need the midfield talent. They took a 25-year-old in the mid-season draft who didn't get on the park in the second half of the year. Their midfield's slow. It's one-paced. It's one-dimensional. They're going to get rid of Matt Crouch because they know he's adding to that. Rory Sloane doesn't have a lot of time left, and Rory Laird and Ben Keys need some outside players to help them, and Elijah fits in there. So if Adelaide do the right thing, Baus, and go someone else, and Tsatas is on the board at pick 6, yes, please.
So before I move off Tsatas, when did he do the foot fracture?
Late May. Late May.
Okay.
Yep.
All good. All right.
So he should be absolutely fine.
All right. So let's say he is gone. Who is the next choice for the Hawks? Because now it's money time now. This is realistically the window of players where we think this is a high likelihood.
Yeah, we'll call these the likely 4, if you will. So these, if we keep pick 6, we don't do anything crazy in terms of moving up, moving down. We walk in with pick 6. Here are your 4 that are most likely. We'll start with Bailey Humphrey from the Gippsland Power. And I'm going to be honest, I was so late to the Bailey Humphrey party. I watched him play the preliminary final highlights and I went, hang on, this kid looks every bit like Harry Sheezel 2.0 in a way. The downside, if there is such a downside, and this isn't Bailey's fault, is it's taken so late in the year to blossom. So are we looking at it from a recency bias point of view? Now, the draft experts are telling us no, and I'm more than happy to believe them. He did have a knee injury throughout the season, so that is a reason why it did take so long. I know there are some Hawks fans and some fans out there in general that aren't a big favour of late season hype, but the knee injury was why. He returned in the next 3 games after his knee injury, he kicked 9 goals, 10. And in a couple of those games, we had some of the most howling wins. So don't take that as he's an inaccurate goal kicker. His first game back, you'd expect a little bit of rust, Matt. Would that be fair? First game back from a knee injury, you might be a little bit slow.
100%.
Yeah, he had 31 and kicked 4 goals, 5.
Well, if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't mind, umpire. So the term X Factor gets thrown around a lot. Everyone's looking for the next, Toby Green or whatever you want, but this kid does scream X Factor. He does seem like a quality, the first part of his career, I think he's going to be a quality, not quantity type of player. I think his first year is going to be very much like Connor McDonald this year, that half-forward flanker who we think might rotate through the midfield at some point, but get him within 45 metres of goal and he's going to punish you, which Connor did throughout the year the longer it went on. And I hope he's a little bit better behaved than Jordan De Goey. But I see a lot of 18-year-old Jordan De Goey in him. I've got no idea what he's going to grow up to be, and I'm not a fan of player comparison and say he's going to be this guy, he's going to be that guy. I remember watching Jordan De Goey in his under-18 year. I've watched Bailey Humphrey, and I see a lot of similarities between the two. And yes, Jordan De Goey has been a naughty boy off the field, but if you watched his first 2 finals, you know how scary that would be. A lot quieter in the prelim final, but Bailey Humphrey's rocketing up draft leaderboards, and I think he's definitely in the conversation for the Hawks pick.
Love it. Humphrey B. Humphrey B.
If his nickname isn't Bear, I'm going to be real disappointed.
I just had to go there, show my age. But look, X Factor, love it. A bit of Harry C-Mac and a bit of Harry Sheezel. I'm liking the mentions there. So fans, if you think, keen for your thoughts, drop us who you think in the comments is absolutely, the lock if you have a preference and why. Tell us why. All right, so Humphrey, love it.
Yep, love it.
Daz, next.
Yep, moving on. Yeah, so moving on. This is we don't get Baus. We don't get another pick in. And the Hawks are sitting around going, we need a midfielder. And we need one that's going to play round 1. Okay, fantastic. Cam Mckenzie is that man from the Sandringham Dragons. Round 1, wherever he gets drafted, if he is fit, he's playing. This is a guy that hunts the footy, wins the footy. And I'll tell you what he reminds me of in a little bit, I should say, was the Premiership era better version of Liam Shields. Do you remember how Liam Shields would take mark after mark overhead for a guy his size, and we would sort of look at each other as fans and go, I didn't know he had that in him. Yep. Cam Mckenzie's the exact same. He has vice-like hands for a guy of his size. I'll tell you who he does remind me. I'll actually get to the comparison in just a sec. Again, of the under-18 year, not of the player now. But He averaged 26 touches in the Carnival in the championship. In the NAB League Grand Final, he had 26, kicked 2 goals, had 4 inside 50s, and was still ranked as one of the better defensive mids on the ground during the day. He had 22 touches in the prelim. The score involvement stats didn't get released, but according to one draft expert, it would have been 7 or 8 on the day comfortably. And when we talk under 18s, he reminds me so much of Callum Mills, which, you know, if we got that 8 years down the line or 6 years down the line with Callum Mills would be fantastic. But Cam Mckenzie, if we want a ready-made round 1 midfielder, he is the man who can hunt the ball, go after it, professional. He's got a little bit of leadership about him. He's probably the full package. And yeah, if the Hawks are sitting around wanting a ready-made midfielder, Cam Mckenzie is the man.
Do you know, a couple of questions. Do you know how tall Cam is?
I believe he's 186. So kind of a similar size to the guys we have now.
Okay.
Which
And
might
you
be,
said-
yes, which can be a deterrent for fans, I understand.
Oh, look, it's about, you said ready-made and if he is fit. So I want to focus on that because I like the sounds of it. Everything else. A defensive mid with the stats you just threw up is very impressive. But if he is fit, what are you alluding to there?
Oh, if just anything can happen during a preseason. He played all the Carnival games. He played all the NAB League games that he was available for. I think he played a couple of games of school footy as well. Don't have access to those stats, but given what he's done on the field, he probably killed it. So, yeah, an uninterrupted preseason. If he goes to Essendon, Adelaide, Hawthorn, or he might slip, please don't end up at the Tigers. Cam, you're a good man. You don't deserve that. He'll play round 1 for sure. For sure.
Very good. Very good. All right. Moving on. Sounds exciting, but who've you got next? So this would be who you think may be pick 7. So we're beyond potentially who the Hawks may have here, but who knows? Things can change. And we may mix and match for certain reasons. So you've given us some good insights into Humphrey and Mckenzie, who we think are likely, but why is your next one a good fit for the Hawks?
Yeah, 100%. So this guy in a lot of phantom drafts is around the 10 to 12 area. Actually, both of my last two are. So in the US draft terms, it would be called a reach. But, you know, they've happened before in footy and worked out beautifully. And both of them non-Victorians as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on the go-home factor. But let's start in South Australia. Matteus Philippou, I've written an article about this boy, the Woodville-West Torrens. He's 192 centimetres and he's the youngest player in the draft. It's just extraordinary. Hits forward to centre with class. He's a big kick. He played Sandful reserves as well. He averaged 28 and a half disposals throughout the under-18 season, 7 inside 50s, over 6 marks. Again, overhead is very good. 4.5 clearances, 1.5 goals. So he's hitting the scoreboard. And again, we talked about the old Supercoach points, just the lazy 123. And that includes a game in which he went off with a stinger, apparently, and only played a quarter and a half, according to a news report. So adding that in, and he's still at 123. He'll still have some growing to do. He'll probably have to put on a little bit of size. You think of a Will Day body type style of setup. But, yeah, you can't tell me that if we've got Jai, we've got Josh Ward at a centre bounce, both 186, 5, 4 centimetre players who can do some damage, giving it off to a guy who's 192 centimetres who gets the ball and runs forward is just a match made in heaven for mine. He's probably not AFL ready for round 1, so we might need to have a bit of patience, which might be a deterrent for some fans. But 5 years' time, if he's in the right environment, give him a good culture and some senior game time, we could be on the brink of seeing someone pretty special.
Sounds amazing. I like the height for a midfielder that pushes forward hard. So you made him sound that good. I'm thinking Adelaide should almost take him ahead of whoever else. Who knows?
Yeah,
who knows?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, if Adelaide could take Tsatas or Philippou, or even the next guy if they're looking for a leader, I'll talk about that in a second. So, yeah, I'm telling you, man, what Adelaide do is going to depend on what we do if we've still got pick 6. It's extraordinary. They're going to have that many options. I'm looking forward to it.
Amazing. All right, so beyond Philippou, who have you got next? So the last and final one, fans, again, let us know who you're liking the sound of and why. And if you've got some intel on them, footage, questions, just fire away in the comments. But Daz, hit us up with who you think is the last possible player that the Hawks may take with pick 6 in the 2023 draft.
Absolutely. And don't worry, fans, you'll have links to all these players and all their stuff in the description. So you'll be able to look at them and fawn over them as I have. Let's go to the Swan Districts in WA. Let's go to the Western Australian leader during the National Carnival, Elijah Hewitt. There's a lot of Elijahs in this draft, let me tell you. But Elijah Hewitt, Swan Districts boy, he broke through to play Waffle Seniors, which I think goes under the radar a little bit because the Victorian Central bubble, Tyler Sonzi played a couple of games at Box Hill and we went, whoa, he may look senior ready. This kid's playing Waffle Seniors at 18, which is extraordinary. Swan Districts, they weren't the most powerful side this year, but he looked comfortable enough. They kind of played him in the graveyard shift on that half-forward flank, but he kicked a goal in each game. He looked pretty solid. He's clean with his disposal, but as a midfielder for WA and Swan District's reserves, he has been fantastic. The reserves game that got him promoted to seniors against Claremont, he had 31 touches, 6 tackles, 4 clearances, and a goal. He's played 9 games at Waffle level, so senior experience, a big tick. He's explosive. He can play outside. And if the Hawks drafted him, we could start him on a wing or outside. We're not going to need to rush him in at the centre bounce. Like we said, leadership qualities. And one of my favourite moments of the carnival was one of the early games. WA had conceded 6 or 8 goals in the third quarter, and all the players had huddled up about, I think it was about 15, 20 metres before the coach got out there, and Elijah gave him a spray. Just an absolute spray on how poor they were going and how much they needed to lift. Yeah, according to reports, he was talking about playing for the jumper, playing for pride. That, to me, was as big a standout as his stats. And if we're talking about a guy of character, he could almost be one of the best in the draft with that. So Elijah Hewitt, he's falling down a couple of draft boards, maybe because his Waffle stats aren't fantastic. But we know what the Hawks can do in terms of youngsters and creating the best out of them. And his base is still very good.
Amazing. And Talking Hawks' own Denver Granger Barras also went at pick 6, which was the highest for a Swans Districts player. So it would be interesting. And I wonder, Denver, I think he might have even visited the West. So maybe there's a few chats going on. Who knows? Who knows? But sounds great. Elijah Hewitt. There you go, fans. We're going to wrap it up pretty short and sharp tonight. Let us know what you think. Daz, thank you. Amazing overview, and love your insights, love your thoughts. And fans, hit us up. What do you think of all of that? What are the Hawks going to do with pick 6 if it does not go untouched? If there's a pick 7 in the mix, happy for you to put your thoughts, put your questions down, and who you think we should go for if Gold Coast throws it out there and the Hawks jump at that. So amazing. Daz, thanks again. Hawks fans. Have a good time in this draft period, and you will hear from us again before too long. Take it easy.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Cheers.